December 16, 1944 began in a way that felt wrong before anyone could explain why. The Ardennes forest lay frozen and silent in the hours before dawn, the kind of silence that settled into a soldier's bones and made even breathing feel too loud. At 3:47 a.m., Staff Sergeant Robert Merriam moved carefully through the trees near Elsenborn Ridge, his boots crunching softly in the frozen mud. 28 months of combat across Europe had taught him one unbreakable rule: when something feels off, listen to it. That morning, the forest felt like it was holding its breath. Then the voices came. American voices, clear and confident, drifting through the fog ahead. They sounded tired, annoyed, almost casual. A flat Indiana drawl asked for a tow cable. A Brooklyn accent cursed the mud with familiar bitterness. A refined Virginia officer politely requested directions, his tone calm and professional. Every syllable was perfect. Merriam raised his fist, halting his four-man patrol, and listened harder. These didn't sound like Germans mocking American speech. They sounded like home. They advanced cautiously and soon saw 3 figures standing beside a Sherman tank thrown off its track. Mud-stained olive-drab uniforms, regulation helmets, authentic dog tags glinting faintly in the dark. The men looked exhausted in the exact way American soldiers did after too many nights without sleep. The lieutenant stepped forward, gray already creeping into his hair despite his youth, and introduced himself as Lieutenant William Hayes of the 9th Armored. His bars were dulled properly, his gear worn just enough to feel real. Even the Lucky Strike cigarettes in his pocket looked right, straight from a PX. For half an hour, nothing felt unusual. Coffee was shared. Jokes were made about the cold and getting home for Christmas. Complaints about K-rations flowed naturally. The tank mechanic, a stocky corporal named Murphy, explained exactly how the track pin had sheared near St. Vith. A young private from Indiana talked about spring planting back on his family's farm. Hayes spoke about letters from his wife in Richmond and rationing problems back home. It was all painfully normal, the kind of conversation soldiers had 1,000 times a day. Merriam studied the map Hayes unfolded, noting the right grid lines, the smudged pencil marks, the coffee stains earned through real use. He gave them directions toward Malmedy and even passed along a radio frequency that might help them reconnect with their unit. Everything checked out. Every detail fit. Every instinct said these were American soldiers in trouble. Then, casually, as if it meant nothing at all, Hayes mentioned that they planned to rejoin the 23rd Armored Division. The words landed like ice water down Merriam's spine. He didn't react. He didn't flinch. He simply nodded, because in his mind, alarms were screaming. He had memorized every American unit operating in the Ardennes. First Army briefings had drilled that knowledge into him for weeks. There was no 23rd Armored Division. It didn't exist. It never had. Merriam repeated the designation carefully, giving Hayes a chance to correct himself. Hayes didn't hesitate. He smiled and talked about training together during the Louisiana maneuvers in 1942. The confidence in his voice made it worse, not better. No American officer forgot his own division. Merriam smiled back, wished them luck, and watched them disappear into the fog. Only then did he reach for his radio and quietly warn the next checkpoint to verify everything. Within hours, similar reports spread like wildfire. American soldiers who didn't know basic facts about American life. MPs with authority that didn't exist. GIs who couldn't answer simple questions they should have known since childhood. It became clear that Hitler hadn't just launched a ground offensive through the Ardennes. He had sent an army of Americans who weren't American at all. By the next morning, December 17th, Technical Sergeant Joseph Morrison stood at a checkpoint on Elsenborn Ridge, stamping his feet against the cold. He'd been an MP for 18 months, long enough for routine to become muscle memory. When 3 military policemen approached out of the mist, he barely tensed at first. They looked perfect. White helmet liners, Sam Browne belts, spotless .45s, proper bearing. The senior man introduced himself confidently and claimed orders from 1st Army Headquarters. Morrison checked his logbook and found no such orders, but the explanation sounded reasonable. Communications were always a mess during combat. Still, something tugged at him, and he asked where the sergeant was from. "Detroit," came the answer, quick and confident. Morrison smiled. He was from Dearborn. He'd grown up around Detroit baseball, lived it, argued about it, felt it in his bones. "You follow the Tigers?" he asked casually. "Of course," the man replied. "Great team." That was all he said. It was correct, but it was hollow. Any real Tigers fan would have said more. Complained about the pitching. Mentioned Briggs Stadium. Talked about heartbreak seasons or favorite players. The response was empty of emotion. Morrison let them pass, watched them vanish down the road, then grabbed his radio. "Ask them who won the American League pennant," he told the next checkpoint. They didn't know. The 3 men were detained within minutes. Under questioning, they broke. German commandos, trained for months, fluent in English, armed with captured equipment. Word spread fast. Faster than anyone expected. Within hours, checkpoints across the Ardennes began asking questions that had nothing to do with documents or rank. They asked about baseball, about hometown streets, about radio shows, jingles, high school rivalries. And the results were devastating. German agents could recite manuals and regulations perfectly, but they couldn't fake the unconscious knowledge that came from growing up American. They gave answers that were accurate but lifeless. They sounded like textbooks, not memories. Cultural identity, it turned out, wasn't something you could memorize. By December 18th, 1st Army Headquarters formalized the process. Sports knowledge became the first screen. Geography the second. Popular culture the third. The results stunned everyone. In 48 hours, dozens of infiltrators were caught. Detection rates climbed toward perfection. Sabotage missions collapsed. Operation Griffe, Hitler's bold deception, was being strangled by questions about baseball and childhood. Interrogations revealed the truth. German intelligence had mastered the surface of American life but misunderstood its depth. Nazi racial theories had never accounted for shared experience, for the emotional glue that bound people together. When agents were asked about hometown diners or favorite radio voices, they froze. The pressure broke them faster than physical interrogation ever could. By December 20th, the infiltration threat was effectively dead. Most commandos were captured, killed, or forced to retreat without completing a single objective. Intelligence officers declared the method revolutionary. Cultural screening seemed unbeatable. But victory carried a hidden cost. German intelligence studied every question that caught their men. They catalogued every weakness. Training camps began building mock American towns. Former American POWs were forced to teach accents, habits, emotional responses. By early 1945, reports surfaced of German agents who could discuss baseball with frightening fluency. When Morrison learned the truth, it shook him deeply. The thing he thought could never be faked had only been unfamiliar. The advantage had been temporary. Yet the legacy endured. Intelligence agencies learned that identity ran deeper than paperwork. Modern counterintelligence, deep cover training, and security vetting all trace their roots back to frozen roads in the Ardennes and a simple question about baseball. Because in the end, The greatest deception wasn't uniforms or accents. It was believing that belonging could ever be reduced to a checklist.